When it comes to wildfire in California, there's some big updates to talk about, and I'm not going to lie, the weather forecast for the next couple days is looking pretty bad. So we're going to dive into that to see what our fires might be doing in the future. As always, if you're short on time or you're only interested in one of the fires, you can go down into the time bar and click directly to the fire that you want to hear about. With that being said, I would suggest watching the next few minutes as I'm going to go over the major factors that affect all our wildfires, just so I don't have to keep repeating myself throughout the video. So we'll start with that by looking at the satellite imagery, where you'll notice there is a large amount of smoke over California right now, especially coming from the Castle Fire here in the valley. Now, there's a few reasons for all this smoke being produced. One, conditions the last couple days have been in the triple digits, humidities have been in the low teens to single digits, and we've gotten some wind gusts in the 25 to 30 mile per hour range. So all of that leads to some active fire behavior, which leads to a lot of smoke. We also have really weak upper level winds, so there's not much wind to push this smoke out of the area. Now, with that being said, I actually don't mind seeing all the smoke over all of our fires because it actually acts as a protective layer to keep the temperatures down. So while smoke is bad for air quality and it's certainly unhealthy, personally, I'll take it if it means reduced fire behavior. That might just be me though. So the main thing that we're going to be talking about in this video, one of the key areas that I'm worried about, is this red flag warning that you see directly over the glass fire and has now been extended all the way up into the August complex as well. So that's one of the key things I'm worried about there. And if you don't know what a red flag warning means, it basically just means bad wildfire conditions. It means you'll have wind gusts into the 20 to 30 mile per hour range and extremely dry air. Now, the reason that dry air is important is because if the air is dry, the vegetation gets dry, and then we get some more fire spread. Same is true for winds. If the winds are strong, it can lead to spot fires where it picks up burning embers, creates new little fires. So a red flag warning is never what we want to see, and that is in effect from 1 p.m. Thursday to 6 p.m. Friday. So that's the key thing I'm worried about right now. One other thing that's never good for wildfire is extreme heat. And you can see right now, temperatures are expected to be 15 to 25 degrees above average. And I know that just shows this Bay Area and a little farther south here, but really we have extreme heat over all of California right now, working into the triple digits in actually most places. So we can actually see those temperatures by going to this map here. This is showing what it looks like right now. But if we go towards these afternoon, you can see we're up into the triple digits. Even in the South Bay in San Jose, they're expected to hit 100 degrees today. Unfortunately, these warm temperatures are going to be sticking around tomorrow. So again, warm temps and wildfire, not a good combination. Even worse than the warm temperatures though, I would say is the humidity. Like I was just saying, it dries out the vegetation when the air is dry. And if you've ever gone to a campfire and tried to start the campfire with a moist log or a dry log, it probably makes sense which one is easier to start the fire and then which one burns hotter and faster. So dry air is never what we want to see, and unfortunately, it's going to be over California for the next 2 days. And you'll also notice it didn't go down during the overnight hours, which is bad because then we get active fire behavior overnight and firefighters never really get a chance to get control over the blaze. Now, I know I've just said a lot of bad news when it comes to our fires, but there is actually some good news. Come Saturday and Sunday, we should get some reduced temperatures, and then we're going to see this huge blob of moist, humid air start to push into California, which is exactly what we need. You can see humidities could be reaching 70 to 80%, even in the afternoon hours, where in the past, that number has been in the single digits. So it's great to see. While the next 2 days are going to be about as extreme as it gets for wildfire, Saturday and Sunday are looking much better. Now, the other thing that I'm worried about is the wind gusts, and this is going to be a factor throughout Thursday and Friday, especially around the glass fire in the August complex, where we have that red flag warning. We could be getting some gusts around 25 to 30 miles per hour. Now, that's also going to be true for Friday, and Friday there's actually a broader area that gets those wind gusts. As you can see, Glass Fire, August Fire, North Complex, Creek Fire, even working into Southern California, could be getting some 30 to 35 mile per hour wind gusts, which certainly isn't what we want to see. But one thing I'll point out, when a lot of these fires really started blowing up over this last weekend, we had hurricane force wind gusts. There was wind gusts up to the 70 mile per hour range. So while 30 mile per hour is still extreme and not what we want to see, it's at least going to be better than it was this last weekend. So when it comes to air quality, it's looking pretty bad right now. As you could tell from that satellite map that just showed a thick layer of smoke all over California. Like I said, keeps temperatures down because there's a protective layer, so that's at least good for new smoke being produced. But you can see there's unhealthy air basically covering the majority of California right now. Looking at the forecast for today, you can see that unhealthy air isn't going anywhere. And especially in the North Bay, where I am right now, and I can tell you looking out my window, it's extremely smoky and hazy. Now, the forecast for tomorrow shows that it's going to be better, but I don't really buy it because unfortunately there's going to be some active fire behavior over the next 24 hours with that red flag, with the triple digit temperatures, with the single digit humidities. So I think unfortunately there's going to be a lot of smoke produced. Now, not only will there be a lot of smoke produced, but we don't have those upper level winds to push the smoke out of the area. It's the upper level winds that really act to clear the smoke out, and as you can see, they're extremely weak over California for the next 2 days. I know there's a lot going on this map, so these purple colors show very extreme upper level winds. These blue and greens show very weak upper level winds. So you can see that's covering California through Friday, and actually getting, it seems, lower on Friday. So I'm expecting we have some pretty poor air quality tomorrow. Now, with that being said, with more smoke comes reduced fire behavior. So honestly, I'll take it. Now, the first fire I want to talk about is the Glass Fire, and that's because this is honestly the one that I'm the most worried about right now because of that red flag warning. Now, if we click in here, there's some good news and bad news with this one. The bad news is you can see there is still a lot of active fire behavior, especially on this northern edge, this area just south of Calistoga, and this area south of St. Helena. So obviously we never want to see active fire, especially when a red flag warning is pushing in. But there's also some good news. This area that was pushing into Santa Rosa appears to have calmed down. There's less hotspots now, and the area directly around St. Helena seems to be a lot calmer than it has been in the past. One other piece of good news is the northern edge of this fire, which appears the most active, is about to start burning into the LNU Lightning Complex fire scar. So what that means is about a month ago, a ton of this vegetation was burned out. So by the time this fire gets into this area, there's not going to be much left to burn. So a lot of this growth is going to significantly calm down. So that's at least some good news there. Now, with this next map I'm going to show here, this is the Wharf S-Fire model. It pairs the fire below with the winds above. And I almost didn't show this model because it's going to show some extremely active fire behavior over the next 2 days. And I want to just make it clear this is an experimental forecast only, and it doesn't take into account firefighter strategic operations. So what you're about to see burned, I don't think is actually going to happen. But I do like showing this animation because it gives a good visualization of how winds and fire interact. So you notice where you get those strong winds is where you get the fire growth. One, that's because the winds just push the fire forward. Two, it can pick up some burning embers and create little spot fires that then connect with the main fire to lead to some rapid spread. Now, this is where I don't really trust this model, what it's saying is going to happen. It says with those extreme wind gusts, we're going to see extreme fire growth. And I know people in St. Helena are probably just gasping right now. Again, This model doesn't take into account fire suppression tactics, and I know some good lines have been put in place to protect our communities. So, again, extreme winds will be a factor, but luckily we've got firefighters. So, when it comes to the numbers for the glass fire, we're now up to 56,000 acres. This has been growing pretty rapidly over the last couple days, and unfortunately, with that red flag warning, I do expect this number to continue to go up. It's good to see we do have 5% containment, and as always, when it comes to evacuations, check the link in the description. I do know there have been some new evacuations with this fire. Unfortunately, we are up to 250 structures destroyed, but we do have 2,000 personnel on this fire now. So that's why I was saying don't trust that model 100%. We've got a lot of resources, 23 crews, 22 helicopters, 295 engines, 81 dozers, and 37 water tenders that are all going to be working together to make sure that fire growth that the model showed doesn't happen. Now, when it comes to the forecast, this is something to worry about, and especially over the next 2 days. I'm not going to lie, 104 degrees. You can see there's a heat advisory. That's extreme. That's about 15 to 20 degrees above average. Friday's looking warm, but the good news is Saturday and Sunday getting much cooler, and then we're also going to get some humidity in here. So that's just what we want to see. One thing I will say, you might notice the red flag isn't showing up for Calistoga, and that is because Santa Rosa and Calistoga aren't actually in this red flag warning, but you will see that the red flag does cover the majority of the glass fire. So that's why I am concerned about this one. Now, when it comes to the humidity, this is looking pretty bad over the next 2 days, getting into possibly the single digits this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. So, extreme temps, extremely low humidity, and those wind gusts are also going to be a factor throughout the next 2 days. You can see towards this afternoon, those wind gusts start to push in, maybe 25, possibly 30 mile per hour wind gusts. And then the same thing is going to happen Friday afternoon. We get 27 mile per hour wind gusts, maybe pushing up to 35 in some of the drainages and canyons. So, this is definitely one of the key fires I'm going to be watching over the next 48 hours. Now, the next fire I want to talk about is the North Complex here. You can see there is some smoke being produced by this fire. If we go into the fire perimeter and hotspot map, you can see where that smoke is being produced, and it's looking like it's in the exact same spot as it has been burning for the last few days. Now, one thing I'll point out, the entire rest of this fire perimeter looks extremely calm, and we do have a large portion of this fire contained. The one area that is still burning is this northern section, and I will point out in the last couple days, the big thing we were talking about is whether it would cross Highway 70, and based on this map, it appears that it officially has. The main reason for this is due to down canyon winds. And what that means is basically the canyon cools off in the overnight hours, and you get winds pushing down the canyon, leading to some spot fires where it picks up burning embers, creates a new little fire. But the good news is the exact opposite happens during the day. The canyon heats up, winds push back uphill, and then firefighters can come in here and put some of these hot spots out. Now, that little hot spot and that spot fire there, that was one thing that started because of those down canyon winds a couple days ago, and I'm glad to say that one is basically controlled. So hopefully we see that exact same thing happen with some of those spot fires we're seeing pop up right now. Now, when it comes to the numbers for the North Complex fire, we're at 314,000 acres, but we're at 79% containment. And if we actually look at where that containment is, you can see the majority of this fire is contained, and the area I'm the most happy to say is contained is this southern spot around Forbes-town. That was a main priority last week. They put in a lot of good work, and I'm happy to say that is now contained down there. Where I am still worried is on this northwestern section, as we do still see some active fire growth. Now, when it comes to the forecast for this area, just like our other fires, next 2 days, extremely hot, and then working into the weekend, it's going to cool down. The other thing that I'm pretty worried about with this fire is how low the humidity stays in those overnight hours. Now, the reason that's so important is because when the humidity is low at night, it allows for active fire behavior to occur, and that's where we've been seeing the most active fire behavior with the North Complex. The main reason for that goes back to those down canyon winds I was just talking about. You'll notice right now we have 25-mile-per-hour wind gusts pushing down canyon. That's because it hasn't flipped around yet, but you'll see as we go into the afternoon today and the canyon heats up, those winds shift back uphill. So that's a perfect little animation of how that diurnal pattern really works out. One thing I will point out, pushing into Friday, we could be seeing some 25-mile-per-hour gusts with this one, but being further inland, we don't have that red flag warning that we see with the glass fire in the August complex, so the winds with this one are actually looking better than some of our other fires. Now, just mentioned the August complex, I think now would be a good time to get into it, and you can see there's a large smoke plume coming up off the August complex right now. The other fire in this area is the Zogg fire here, and I'd actually like to dive into the Zogg fire first because this one is actually looking pretty good right now. This is one of the fires I was extremely concerned about because over the weekend, this area had some extreme wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, and the entire perimeter of this fire was showing a ton of hotspots. As you can see now, though, the majority of this perimeter is actually looking pretty calm. I'll point out these yellow dots here show what was burning 48 to 72 hours ago, and you'll notice there's not a lot of behavior in those areas anymore. Where we do still see some growth is on this northwestern and southern section here, and one thing I have been talking about is the possibility of the Zogg fire combining with the August complex, but given the fact that the fire behavior has appeared to have calmed down a lot with this one, I no longer think it's going to combine with the August complex. I think we will still see some growth in this area, but I don't think there's going to be enough to actually combine with the August complex. Now, when it comes to the numbers for the Zogg fire, we're up to 55,000 acres, but we're up to 26% containment, and I'm honestly very surprised and encouraged to see how much containment has been created on this fire in such a short period of time. Typically, at the beginning of a fire, they're mostly worried about life safety and structure protection, so it's amazing to see this much containment this early on. As always, check the evacuations by clicking the link in the description. And when it comes to damages and losses, this is something that is extremely unfortunate because I hate to say it, these numbers have gone up in the last 24 hours. We now have 150 structures destroyed, and there are now 4 fatalities associated with this fire. So, as always, if you or any of your family or friends have been affected by this fire, my thoughts and prayers go out to you. When it comes to the personnel, we're now up over 1,300. That's way up from what it was the last couple of days. 31 crews, 13 helicopters, 133 engines, 37 dozers, and 52 water tenders. So that's part of the reason all that containment has been able to be made over the last couple days is they're getting more and more resources on this fire. So that's great to see there. When it comes to the August complex, same areas burning that have been burning the last couple days, this northern section here and this western section here. You'll notice the entire southern and eastern edge appear to be completely calm, and this entire eastern edge is actually at 100% containment. This is one of the fires I am the most worried about, though, as that red flag warning did extend into this fire perimeter. So I'm definitely going to be watching this one closely as conditions are looking pretty bad for the next couple days. When it comes to the numbers for the August complex, we are now over 950,000 acres. And to put that into perspective, that is more than we typically get in an entire wildfire season in California. So in one fire, we've passed the seasonal average. The other crazy fact about this one is if you were to stretch out this fire perimeter, it would reach past Los Angeles. And I'll also point out where that red flag warning is. You see, it is covering part of our fire that is actively burning. So I'm going to be watching that area right there extremely closely. Now, evacuations, I do know there have been some new ones, so stay updated with that. 51 structures destroyed. I'm happy to say that number has not gone up recently. And we've got 1,600 personnel, 30 crews, 17 helicopters, 166 engines, 37 dozers, and 44 water tenders. One thing I will be interested to find out with this is if they're actually able to use the helicopters today, as the smoke in this area looks extremely thick. So I'll be interested to know if visibility is so poor they actually can't use their aerial operations. Now, looking at the containment map, you can see entire eastern section contained and uncontained where we do still see that fire growth. When it comes to the forecast, like I said, this is one of the areas that I am the most worried about. That's because we could be seeing some extreme wind gusts throughout the afternoon today, and then also tomorrow where we get above 25 miles per hour, which means some of the drainages and canyons could be seeing 30 miles per hour. Now, when it comes to temperature, we're not in the triple digits for a lot of the higher elevation places, but we are still in the 90s and mid 90s throughout the day today and tomorrow. So temperatures are a problem as well as humidity. This is showing tomorrow 13%. That's extremely dry, as well as the afternoon today into the low teens. That's going to lead to some fire growth, especially when you combine it with those wind gusts. Now, I know I just said a lot of bad things, so let's get into some good news. Towards Saturday and Sunday, a lot of that coastal humid moist air is going to start pushing in, which is exactly what we need to really calm some of our fires down. So the next fire I want to talk about is the Creek Fire and the Castle Fire. And especially the Castle Fire here, as you can see, there's a lot of smoke being produced with this one. We can actually see that on the fire perimeter and hotspot map. If we go down here, you can see why there is so much smoke produced, but with this one, it's all really isolated to this northern edge here. There's some steep drains, some heavy fuels that are critically dry, so that's leading to some active fire behavior in this area. I will point out that with this, no wait, we're down here now. Sorry, I have about 40 tabs open, so sometimes it's hard to keep track. Now, I will point out that a lot of the smoke that we see over the valley and the Bay Area that's creating that poor air quality we were talking about earlier is really directly due to the Castle Fire here. Now, when we get into the numbers for this one, it is up to over 151,000 acres, but it is 61% contained. So that's at least good to see that we are still gaining some containment with this. The other fire in this area is the Creek Fire. And one thing I'll point out, the southern edge of this one is looking good, much reduced fire behavior than what we've seen in the past. And I'd actually say it's also reduced fire behavior in the northern portion as well. The main reason for that, we've talked about this before, it's starting to push into rockier terrain, which means less vegetation, which means less fuel for the fire. There's also less fuel for the fire because it's starting to burn into where the Lion Fire previously burned a couple years back. So that fire burned out some of the vegetation here, which means when the fire gets here, there's not as much fuel to feed further growth. And I'm happy to say I finally found a map that actually shows this. You can see where the Lions Fire was in 2018, and it's interesting to see how the fire perimeter of the Creek Fire basically just stops right where the Lions Fire was. This actually shows an important feature of the California ecosystem. When we get fires, it reduces the fuels and then it reduces fire behavior in the future. And it's just interesting to see that the fire perimeter literally just stops where the Lions Fire had previously burned. Now, when it comes to the Creek Fire, we're at 309,000 acres and we're at 44% containment. When it comes to the personnel on this, we've got 1,835 crews, 10 helicopters, 126 engines, 16 dozers, and 46 water tenders. Now, one other thing I will point out, there have been 855 structures destroyed with this, so it has been a bad fire, but this number hasn't gone up in 5 or 6 days. So I believe they've really been getting some control over this fire, and a large portion of that increase in containment and reduced fire behavior is due to the weather conditions. You'll notice that it's much more favorable conditions than a lot of our other fires. We're still warm in the 90s, but it's not the triple digits we're seeing with the glass fire and the August complex. So we're in the 90s throughout really the next 5 days, actually reducing in temperature as we get into Saturday and Sunday and Monday. One thing I am worried about with this one, though, is those wind gusts that we see in the overnight hours combined with the low relative humidity. You can see how flat that humidity graph is. So, again, when it's dry for 48 hours straight, that can lead to fire behavior for 48 hours straight. So, while temperatures are moderated, wind gusts and humidity do remain a concern with the creek fire. Now, the last fire I want to talk about is the Bobcat fire in Southern California, but this is even more just going to be a forecast for the LA and Southern California area in general. And the main reason for that is there's not a whole lot going on with the Bobcat fire anymore. This one basically looks like it's out. I'll show in a second, there is maybe one or two hotspots remaining around the Mount Wilson area, but for the most part, this fire is no longer a concern, and I love saying that because this was a very active fire, especially last week when we had some extreme wind gusts and low humidity in this area. Now, like I said though, overall, Southern California has some extremely tricky fire conditions. If we actually get into that, you can see there's an excessive heat warning throughout a lot of the foothill and LA County area throughout the day today. And you can see it could be getting up to 106 degrees in some areas. Luckily, come Sunday and Monday, temperatures should be going down. The other thing I'm concerned about when it comes to fire behavior is some of these afternoon wind gusts that could be pushing in, and humidity is just ridiculously low. I don't think I've ever seen a map where the majority of the next 24 to 48 hours is below 15%. I know I say that every day, but it seems like every single day just keeps getting drier and drier than the graph was showing in the past. So, again, what that allows is active fire behavior 24 hours a day. So, this graphic kind of sums up what's going on in Southern California. It's going to be hot and dry. We get those afternoon wind gusts. So, while there aren't any fires right now that I'm really worried about in SoCal, I am going to be watching this area because if something does start, it's most likely going to grow into a major blaze fairly fast. Now, the last thing I want to do is just do an overview of the 2020 wildfire season in general because it has been the worst season in recorded history. We're now approaching 4 million acres burned, which is double the previous record. The previous record, number 2 worst California wildfire season of all time, was around 2 million acres burned. So we have doubled that number, and you can see just the August complex alone is more than our seasonal average. So far this year, there have been over 8,000 wildfires, and right now we have over 17,000 firefighters battling over 25 major wildfires across the state. So, like I said, this wildfire season has been just unreal, and unfortunately, October is typically the month when we get our worst wildfires. So, I hate to say it, but I'm not expecting the wildfire season to come to an end anytime soon. But I will continue to make these updates every single day to keep you guys updated with everything that's going on. As always, if you're a member of CAL FIRE, the U.S. Forest Service, thank you for all the amazing work you do. Thank you to San Jose State and Dr. Craig Clements for teaching me basically everything I know about wildfire. And if you or any of your friends or family have been affected by these wildfires, my thoughts and prayers go out to you, and thanks for watching.